Welcome back, everybody. Dr. Bogosian here. We are continuing in our discussion of Aristotle's theory of justice. This is part 2. Last time we ended by looking at how he thinks about justice as being giving everyone what they deserve, and we figured that out by asking ourselves what goal or purpose or end each practice that we participate in has. When we understand the goal of a practice or the purpose of a practice, that helps us understand its essential nature, number one, and number two, what virtues or qualities the individuals who participate in that practice must possess and cultivate if they are going to help that practice thrive or flourish. The degree to which a person embodies the virtues necessary to help the practice thrive, they should be rewarded. The degree to which they don't do that, they embody vices that work against, right? Pull against the thriving of the practice, then the person should not be rewarded, or maybe more strongly should be punished. Where we left off last time was talking about the importance of political association. Political association, again, for Aristotle, is the idea of having associations with other individuals and groups that will help you in the practice thrive. And so let me pull up our notes here, our presentation, and we will continue where we left off. This is the slide we left off on. Again, if you need to go pull or grab a copy of the note sheets, that's in the module under the lecture materials tab. And we're picking up right where we left off, which was with this slide. For Aristotle, remember, the purpose of political community and association is for you and I to be able to be a part of groups that help us develop our unique capacities and virtues. And included in that is learning to deliberate and use sound, practical reasoning to care for the whole community. So if you're a professional basketball player, the Professional Basketball Association should be arranged such that you're able to develop your basketball capacities and virtues tied to playing basketball well to help professional basketball thrive. If you're a philosopher like myself, you participate in the practice not only of professional philosophy, but maybe of other associations like education, or other, let's say, philosophical societies that help you develop your skills and utilize those skills and develop the virtues unique to those set of practices. Why? Well, it's not just so you can make money and have property like some libertarians think, or where you can just promote your own desired ends as Rawls and Hayek think. It's so that you can promote the common good. Ultimately, I need to develop my skills and capacities and virtues so that I can help others in the community develop theirs. And so I have a function in the community, and you have a function in the community to promote what are called common goods. Let's add a little bit more to that today and look at what Aristotle thinks is essential in the social political domain for everyone to be able to develop their skills, capacities, and virtues, not only in their particular practices, but in their life more generally. Politics exists, right? Political authority exists to set the social conditions whereby we can thrive, most thrive. What is needed at a minimum is what's called a rule of law. The rule of law is where there are laws in place that exist for this and are applied the same for everyone. So if speeding is wrong, it's wrong for everyone. If murder is wrong, it's wrong for everyone. You don't get away with breaking those laws simply because your mom or dad is in power, or you know the right people, or you have a certain good look, or drive a certain car, etc., or you voted for a certain person. The rule of law is where there is a system of law that's in place to help protect people and advance their good and help people thrive and grow and develop. And that's should be applied consistently to every person, regardless of who they are. That's also going to apply to other things like we'll see a rule of life and the good life. But first, a money quote from Aristotle. Any polis, that is, any social political arrangement, which is a true one, a good one, is not merely one in name only. It must devote itself to the end of the goal, the end or purpose of encouraging goodness. Otherwise, a political association sinks into mere alliances, right? Where you're just allied with certain people that are like you. Notice here in that much, Aristotle thinks you have to be aiming for goodness as a society, and that makes him very different than John Rawls and Kant. John Rawls thinks, for example, we can think about equality apart from any interest in what the good is. Aristotle says, no, you can't promote justice without thinking what the human good is and what the good society is. And so if we avoid thinking about the good, we're going to kind of devolve into just taking up alliances to get what we want. And that's just more like pitting each other one against the other and just building alliances, right? Power struggle. Otherwise, too, what does the law become if we're just trying to talk about rights apart from what's good for us? That just becomes a covenant, right? A mere social contract, a guarantor of rights against one against another, instead of being, as it should, a rule of life. Now think about that. Laws exist to help us structure and arrange our lives to have a good rhythm and flow to it, to where we can make members of the city or the society good and just. So that's what the law exists for. The law actually exists to help us become good. Of course, you can disobey it. The law by itself doesn't make us good, but the law is there to set the social conditions whereby we operate within them to become better people, to promote the common good. So let's say some more about the political community and the law. They exist not only for physical security, they exist for that. Aristotle's all for, having a police force and a military to protect security and prevent injustice and encourage fair trade. But that's not all law exists for, nor does it also exists as a rule of life to help us lead a good life, a good human life where we thrive and we help others thrive. This is what he calls a civic education. An education in civics is where you learn the law and the purpose of the law and why the particular laws exist and how they're actually there to help you and I become good. Now, if a case can be made that the laws are not good, if they're just breaking us, right, and weighing us down, or they're leading to injustices, well, then the law needs to change. And that's exactly what Martin Luther King Jr. and others have done when they've made a rational Aristotelian case that laws are objectively unjust and they need to change because they're burdensome or objectively unjust to, in Martin Luther King's case, blacks, right? And them not having the right to vote or having the same civil rights as others. And it was impeding their thriving and their dignity and value as individuals. And so as Martin Luther King, who was very well-versed in Aristotle, was arguing, we need to change the laws so that the social conditions are set the same for everybody to help everyone, regardless of race or ethnicity, to thrive within a rule of life that is promoting a common good. And those who now will excel in civic virtues in this rule of life and who are best at deliberating about the common good, right? So these are people who have moral virtue, demonstrate that they have the virtues necessary to think carefully and rationally about the common good, and they actually have a track record of that. They now are worthy of the greatest share of recognition, so there's honor, and political influence, namely public office. So you don't just get into public office because you're a billionaire. That has nothing to do with being virtuous, right? Maybe quite to the contrary. Now, a billionaire could be a virtuous person, but the person or people who should serve in public office and receive recognition as worthy of leading us are people who are good at embody virtue, good character, moral virtue, and intellectual and civic virtues, where they can actually think carefully about how to promote the common good, promote the most good within their grasp, right, to help people thrive. Now, there's an objection here. Why think politics is essential to the good life? Isn't it just a tool, an instrument to get people what they want? Aristotle says, no, politics isn't just a utilitarian instrument, right, to give people what they want. Humans can fully realize their human nature, right? We can only fully thrive or flourish only if we participate in a good political community. So you could become a good person in your character, but if the social political community is corrupt and is tyrannical and you're under an oppressive regime, that's going to stifle, limit, cut off your ability to thrive fully in your human nature, in your intellectual, physical, relational, financial, human nature. So Aristotle has two reasons for thinking this. By nature, we are social creatures. We are social linguistic creatures. If we cannot exercise freedom of speech, freedom of thought, or conscience, freedom to date who we want, we are not going to be able to thrive. And in oppressive cultures or societies, that's exactly what you see. People are unable, we have the thought police or the speech police, and people get imprisoned or fined or even killed for disagreeing with the people in political power. Well, that's bad, right? Because those people are not able to actualize their human nature, and therefore they're not thriving and flourishing. And so what we need is to set up the laws and have people in power who are making the laws and upholding the law to apply it consistently and to allow others to express dissent, express differing views, have a free exchange of open exchange of ideas, because the moral life ultimately for humans aims at human happiness, and happiness for him is flourishing, thriving in every dimension of the human self, intellectually, emotionally, relationally, morally, even spiritually. And so what politics exists for is to help us delight in what's noble and good, what's beautiful and right, and to abhor what's evil and bad. We've actually been doing this very thing with our children, particularly our 6-year-old, who's been asking, well, why are there bad people in cartoons that are ugly and even scary? And we've said to him, well, look, they exist at least in part to help us understand the difference between good and evil. And so we can highlight what's evil, so we know that we don't want to be like that. And we go, oh, that's horrible. Don't be like that. Instead, be like the good person who is the hero, right? Who is defeating the evil, or who is capturing the evil one and bringing them to justice. And that's a way of teaching the young to delight in what's noble and good and right and beautiful, and to abhor what's base or bad, so that they will then go out and become the kind of person who helps others prize what's good and thrive, because we can thrive only if we pursue and embody what's good. Happiness for Aristotle is an activity of soul in accordance with what's virtuous. And virtue is acquired only within a political community where we have others around us who are helping us know what's good and right, do what's good and right, and habituate what's good and right. Think about it this way: morality and justice and building a good society and a just society is like an art form. If you want to become a good artist, whether that's music or graphic art, painting, you have to pair yourself with a good teacher, a good mentor, a good exemplar, somebody who already practices that art form well and can now pass it on to you. My dad, when he was a very young adult, before he owned a business, which he owned for 40 years and retired recently, he was a sheet metal worker. And what he did as a sheet metal worker, in order to become one, he had to apprentice himself to a master craftsman, somebody who knew the trade of sheet metal and could pass along those skills to him, could oversee his work, and then eventually sign off and say, here's the stamp of approval that you now are fit, you're skilled enough to practice sheet metal work by yourself, and we can entrust that to you. And so he needed a mentor, an exemplar, a teacher to come alongside of him to help him form the proper habits and skills to become a sheet metal worker. Morality is like that, and politics is like that. We need moral exemplars, people who are further along down the road of developing virtues like compassion and generosity, or kindness and love, because we don't fall into those things. There are no random acts of kindness. Kindness is formed in us by intentionally acting kindly. And we can learn kindness from people who are already routinely kind, people who can point at us in the direction of habituating kindness, so that gets built into our very soul, our very character, because we act from who we are. Same with justice. Laws and legislators exist to help us cultivate habits that lead to becoming good citizens. And they need to not only be examples of that, embody it, right? They need to help set social conditions through lawmaking to help us develop habits that are good for us so we become good people and good citizens that promote the common good. We need to have a moral education from the time we are young. Now, of course, that starts in the home for Aristotle, but a moral education is also going to be had by your parents, pairing you with good coaches, good mentors, encouraging you to have good friends, even seeing the education system where you have teachers that care about your moral formation. Again, Aristotle would be very uncomfortable with how we try to think of education as being moral free, right? That all bets are off. There's no way for us to really decide who's to say what character traits we encourage in the young. No, he thinks we're doing that. You can't help but do that, right? If we're telling you not to cheat and not to be mean or to be kind or to be considerate or to wait your turn and to share, those are all issues of right and wrong. And so he thinks we should think very carefully of what sorts of character traits the young need to have formed in them, not only to be good students and peers, but to be good people, good citizens. And then we help them habituate those things within the context of education, or within the context of a sport, or within the context of an art form. And then later on down the road, the young will start to have epiphanies, right? They'll go, aha. They see that the good is really good for them. They may not see it at 6 years old or 10 years old, but at some point the lights will go on and they'll realize that the good is really good for them and it's really good for other people. So practicing virtuous actions form virtue in us, virtuous dispositions of character, virtuous sensitivities and feelings. I could say that, some of the things my parents insisted upon and cultivated in us, even through my teen years, right? I resisted those or rebelled against them. But as an adult, I came to see they weren't dumb after all, right? They were really trying to help me have a sensitive, character and demeanor towards people who were in need, people who were less fortunate, people who needed my care, right, and my abilities. And they wanted me to have that character so that I could promote the good of other people, even at a cost to myself. Next here, a virtuous person is one who, okay, this is important. So what's a virtuous person look like? Who is the good person? This is a person who is disposed to doing the right thing to the right person in the right way at the right time and for the right reasons. So contrary to, it's not just doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. It's doing the right thing from a right motivation in the right way, right? We could do the right thing in the wrong way. You could speak the truth in a very harsh way, or you could speak the truth in a very careful, loving, kind way. And so that would be an example of we want to do the right thing for the right reason to the right person in the right way. That's what Aristotle calls the doctrine of the mean. A virtue is a midway point between two polar opposites, two vices, one of excess and one of deficiency. So politics now, virtue in the good life. Virtue requires that we not only habituate certain things to develop character into our very being, good character, we also need to develop practical wisdom. This is it gets into the domain of intellectual virtue, where you become skilled at leveraging or drawing on knowledge and virtue, your knowledge of the virtues, to figure out what virtues you need to act from or on the basis of in given cases. And that might vary. So a practically wise person can think well about what's good, not only for themselves, but for everyone who they have effective contact with. So all parties who are involved or given the very difficult situation. So a virtuous nurse, right? What virtue looks like embodied for a nurse in their practice is going to look very different. What courage looks like for a nurse, for example, is different than what courage looks like for, a business person or a soldier. And so we want to help them become practically wise and virtuous and be able to embody that in their own practices. A practically wise person doesn't merely calculate outcomes, right? Like the utilitarian. They identify the highest human good that's attainable, all things considered, in the given case at hand or with respect to the given practices that they participate in. To bring this all together for today, to summarize this, laws, right? A just society is one that has a rule of law that set the conditions where we can inculcate good habits in the young and the old alike, help us form good character, produce civic virtues, and then ultimately produce citizens who are practically wise people, who use wisdom to guide life and promote the common good. Now, all of this is possible only by being citizens who consider alternate views, argue one's position rationally, and are willing to be ruled and rule with the interest of virtue, the good, human flourishing, the common good all in mind. With that, I want to wrap for today. I hope you have found all this very interesting. What I want you to think about on your own is go to pages 200 to 203 and look at one shortcoming of Aristotle, his actual view, and how he actually justified slavery. Now, it would be easy to look at that and then want to dismiss his whole theory of justice. That would be too quick. As many contemporary Aristotelians do, you can tweak his view very mildly, right, or very small, in a small way, and argue that he got his application of justice wrong to the issue of slavery. And that gets into how he thinks of human beings metaphysically, okay? He thinks that, we're sort of born with kind of deterministically with different endowments. You can pull that off of his view and keep just about everything else. And then you could still argue that all human beings have equal worth and dignity, and therefore have the equal possibility to flourish regardless of their natural endowments, and therefore are worthy of equal treatment under the law to have the chance to thrive given their own natural endowments. And I want you to look at how Sandel argues that in his chapter. And then I also want you to look at the golf cart and Justice Scalia examples. So look at those and how Sandel is using those to kind of tweak and modify Aristotle's view because he's sympathetic to Aristotle. And then I'll look forward to seeing what you have to say in the discussion board. Have a great rest of the day. I'll see you back here next time to talk about our next topic. Take care.